What's up, y'all? This is the Adapt or Die podcast, a podcast that explores new and relevant ideas for the purposes of self-growth and helping you live a more fulfilled lifestyle. My name is Armel Tala.
And my name is Ben Smith. We're two university students pursuing our own journeys of self-growth with the hopes of sharing our findings with you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Adapt or Die podcast. It's your host, Armel.
And your co-host, Ben.
And last episode, we were talking about personality, but more specifically, we're talking about is personality from genetics or is it from your environment? But this episode, what are we going to be discussing, Ben?
Today, we're going to talk about how evolution has actually shaped personality differences between genders.
This is a very different topic, and
Yeah.
I'm interested. He said this is really interesting, so
it really is. Okay, so it's very interesting.
Okay, so where do we even start when it comes to evolution, you know?
So, I want to just reel it back real quick.
Okay, let's reel it back.
Do you think that males and females have innate personality differences, like as a whole, like generally speaking?
When you say innate, define innate.
Innate just being, just like you see it across, like all women have tendencies that are similar.
100%.
Yeah, okay. And then all men have tendencies that are similar,
100%.
and those tendencies across two genders are separate. Like they're distinct. Like there's certain things in males and females that are just they're unique to males and females.
Yeah, and to make sure that we are being aware and of everybody else. When we're talking about gender here, we're gonna constrain to just male and female. We understand that people identify as different things.
No, yeah.
But as for this conversation, for the idea of simplicity and the fact that there's just more research on these topics, that we're just gonna constrain ourselves to those. But we do understand, and we're not trying to
not at all.
Not at all trying to discredit anybody in what they believe they are.
Absolutely. And also, in terms of evolution, I know some people don't believe in evolution. We're not trying to force that on anyone. This is exploring. Yeah, we're just exploring how the idea, because it does really give a good explanation of some differences between males and females. So we're not trying to force it or say this is absolutely. We're just giving it very interesting ideas and throwing them out there. So that's disclaimer.
Mm-hmm. And for y'all to kind of recap on last episode, we hit upon the ideas that that one, we kind of came to our own conclusion, not conclusion from scientists because they're still trying to, come to a conclusion. But our own is that genetics lays the foundation, right? So genetics lays the foundation of your personality, and then your environment kind of shapes how your personality comes to be.
They absolutely work together.
It's like working together, and the percentage which you can argue about that in the comments below. But so you asking that, do I see an innate personality traits between men and women? Of course. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
Without even a doubt, I don't even have to think about that.
Right. And then so the real question is why? Where does that come from?
It's actually funny that you kind of talk, you asked the why, because not that I haven't answered the why, but looking back at history, obviously it has to do with evolution and history. Mm-hmm. But we're in one of my classes is ancient Rome class. They talked about the importance of marriage, right, and the importance of things like that. And this actually almost has nothing to do with personality thing, but I just think it's cool to see how in the Rome they were emphasizing marriage was super important because was important to them because it allowed them to know truly who was their son, right? So it's
actually a really interesting point.
It's actually really crazy because if you think back then you had no technology to be this is my real son. So marriage is the one way you could keep your family line to be true. So that's just to emphasize on the point that things in the past really do shape how we perceive and our values today.
That's a really good point. And
profound thoughts from Armelicus Melius.
But let's just start off with males. So males are generally, I guess, larger, stronger, more aggressive than females. I think that's kind of a generally seen characteristic. Just generally speaking, obviously it's not true for everyone. We're just on the
general case,
right? And so, for years, for the longest time, as a mystery. Why are there personality differences between genders? Where does the basis of that come from? Mm-hmm. Because it seems so ordinary to us in a lot of ways, but when you think about it, there's got to be a reason, right? Yeah. And so this is where evolution comes in. Okay, and going over evolution real quick. The thing the one thing that is king in evolution Is literally the only thing that matters is reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the only thing evolution cares about is reproduction.
It's funny you were gonna say that, because when you asked like why and like how these personalities came, the first thing that came into my mind was like it just, I feel like it really, a lot of it has to do with their roles too, as women having to take care of children and men having like it's, and we're talking back in like the hunter-gatherer age, where women primarily focused on like, they like, your sole job was keep this baby alive so our people can keep, you know, continuing to live.
Actually interesting thing I found doing this research was that in like very like old primitive hunter-gatherer societies, the women, when the transition to agriculture started, the men were the ones going on hunting and protecting, right? But the women, according to what I found, was that the women were the ones who actually developed agriculture, because they were at home and they were the ones actually providing the bulk of the food through agriculture. And they're the ones, and that was like an interesting fact, because you kind of think of the male as being, and so like, they actually did a lot more than just child care. They really did.
It makes sense. And when you're talking agriculture, that's more of like a in one place, the type of thing where you're at home, you're gardening and and where they were able to provide the grains, and as the males, they went and they were hunting for like the meats and whatever.
And then eventually once they found out agriculture could sustain the family and no hunting was really needed, if they didn't want to, then that's when the male kind of said, oh, okay, then I'll do the agriculture. They kind of like they were like, let me take your cool innovations in agriculture and let me just steal them real quick.
Exactly.
So credit to women. Shout out to
women, man,
for giving us
they do more than we tend to appreciate.
But let's go back to the evolution thing. So again, reproduction is king. Evolution does not care about anything but reproduction. Reproduction is the only thing that matters here. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because that's a key thing. Noted. Now let's investigate the reproductive organs of males and females. So for males, clearly we have I don't want to get to do. But what do males do? Essentially, we ejaculate and the sperm fertilizes the female, right? That's kind of the only thing we do reproductive wise. We don't really play any other role in helping the offspring grow, or obviously we protect it and things like that, but on like a biological basis, we don't really do much. The woman, females, they have eggs, right? So they have the other half of the DNA, but they also have a lot of apparatus to help offspring. And this, when I'm saying this in a very like scientific terms, because this is seen across all species.
And apparatus is
apparatus. So that would be there's the egg is it has a cover, it has like nutrients for offspring to grow. Obviously the woman grows the baby inside of her body. They just have
they
breastfeed. They have the parts in them that are made for everything that's helping offspring grow is basically from the woman. Right?
Exactly. 100%.
Females don't really do much.
Males, you mean?
Males don't really do much. Sorry. And to be clear, this is seen across all species. This is not unique to humans, what we're kind of going over. So now think about, if males, all they do is ejaculate, and females, they are the ones that are taking care of the kid, right? So if females have a baby in them, for humans, it's 9 months, right? That's a long time that, A, they can't have sex, right? And B, think about, that puts a limit on the number of offspring that females can have. Females can only have so many offspring. Males, on the other hand, could have practically have no limit. Like technically, like you could literally,
to the OG Adapt or Die podcast listeners, y'all remember when we had an interview with a teen dad? I think he has 2-3 kids. So that's at the age of like 19. So that's just to tell you, such a young age, males just can have way more kids.
Yeah, and like technically speaking, like you could partner with a new mate every single day, right? Yeah. And that you could
theoretically have 365 kids.
Yeah, you could have thousands and thousands of kids. Now, does that happen? No, but the point is, like,
there's no limit to our reproduction.
There's no limit to male reproduction. There is a limit to female reproduction, and for humans, because of the time, it's actually a pretty big limit, right? Because how many babies will you actually be able to have
and be able to take care of, and also like how many women are out there in the world? That's the limit.
Exactly. And so now think about this from like an economic standpoint. Okay, so what does this create? Now you'll love this. If males can have an infinite number
There's
of
a high
offspring,
supply.
right? That means that they have very high supply. What's in demand? Women, right? So there's men are this is where it gets kind of crazy. You start connecting the dots, right? If men are the ones that they have no limit, right? There's a very high supply. The supply of women is limited. So what is the commodity here? It's women, right?
It's women.
Women aren't chasing men because men they're not. There's a lot, that they can. There's just economically speaking, if you've taken economics, supply and demand, right? And so that creates the age old, we've all seen it. Like, why do men chase women? Like, why don't women? Like that's where this comes from.
Yo, hold on.
This is where this comes from.
Let's pause and let's kind of not elaborate more, but just take a moment to kind of actually appreciate, like, that's actually a mind-blowing thing for me to think about, because in our generation you always hear like, women don't chase men, or men, you always hear about, oh, I'm chasing this female, I'm taking my shot, XYZ. And to think that, like, this whole concept, this whole narrative that we talk about as a society really just kind of stems from the fact that biologically, like, we are the high supply. Women are in demand.
Like, literally, they're in
they're
demand.
Scared, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah. So from an economic standpoint, women are in demand. Men have high supply. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Okay. So if men are chasing women, who's competing? Men. Men are competing against men for women. Right. And then from that logic, what would be good in competition? Okay, there's two major general traits that would help male species or male
be stronger, smarter.
So they develop so we'll get to intelligence later. Aggressiveness is one, so they're very aggressive. Obviously we have testosterone, we're larger, we're stronger, and these are generalizations, but on a biological level we have more testosterone, and so you even see the development, evolution of things like horns in animals. Like the males will have horns and their female counterparts won't. Why is that? Because they're competing against each other for the females, right? So that's the one thing. The other thing is they develop traits that are very they're trying to draw attention to themselves. A great example would be a peacock, right? Think about what is a peacock? They have just beautiful, right? They expand, and I think the feathers. I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah, I know. I've heard that.
But the point is, like, you see them and you're like, wow, like, that's beautiful, and that is done to attract females.
So I guess to put this example into humans, so like for male one is like the stronger, more built man would be the one to have the advantage over others, and then also what you're saying, like a more beautiful guy. You know what I'm saying?
Well. So actually, no. Really, kind of mostly just the strength.
The strength for the human. Okay, like, that makes sense.
So they're more aggressive, and what you also see in males is because we're more aggressive. Like, look at any like hand-to-hand combat type, like any crimes. Think about who's assaulting people. It's males.
It's mainly males.
Like, the statistics back this up totally, right?
Yeah.
Males are the ones that are committing crimes that are very physical, right?
Yeah.
Violent physical crimes are by far the majority from males. And that's a result of evolution becoming males are more aggressive. That's an evolutionary thing.
Yeah.
So that's one large trait that we can easily explain.
You are connecting so many dots right now.
It's blew my mind too. This is why I wanted to talk about this, because I was like, yo, this is crazy. Now let's talk about two major industries in really the world, which are prostitution and porn. Okay. Prostitution has been around in all societies for it's been like this is an age-old idea. It has existed.
I even heard about prostitution in the Roman Empire.
Yeah, no, it's been around, right? And prostitution, obviously, just selling sex is what it means, but it's catered towards men, right? Why is that? Well, kind of going back to the economic type theory, if men are the ones that have basically this unlimited supply, then naturally they have more sexual partners, right? They want more sexual. It's a numbers game. Yeah. Because the more sexual partners they have, the more they reproduce. Remember, reproduction is key in evolution. So reproduction is king.
And this is it's important to highlight this because when we're thinking of our ancestors, the very first humans, like
right.
their minds were very simple. They're like, we need to survive and we need to reproduce.
An interesting note about primitive societies was that they actually had no idea that having sex was what made kids. And you think, like, wait, why would they not know that?
Yo,
they
did it, and then they would have kids.
But think about the amount of time in between when you have sex and when a child is born. It's 9 months. And a lot of times you don't even see the baby growing until a month or two in. And so when you think about older societies, and this is not all of them. A lot of them did know. We're just saying that some primitive societies, many of them actually, did not know that sex is what led to reproduction.
Yo, that is so
that's a crazy fact, right?
Guys, we need to. We might be taking pauses just for me to like really comprehend everything Ben is saying, because he's connecting dots in my brain that I was not ready to have connected. Like it is, and that's so facts. Is like when you think about it, and like people may have sexual intercourse or sex, whatever we want to call it, and like some people don't know they're even like, they're on your period, or they don't even know if they're pregnant until they have like the period. So so us and like for our modern society, there's that short time of period where we know like, okay, if you don't have your period by XYZ, but for them, they didn't know what period was.
And really, how would they know?
Nothing.
How would they know?
So one day, the person in your tribe that you did something with, is cool. She's chilling. She's looked, and then all of a sudden she got a fat stomach. And next, you just like,
next thing you know, and
that is insane.
And so that's a really interesting fact. The really interesting part about that is that those societies, they had a lot of sex. They did. Like they didn't see sex. The point in me saying that is that sex was not it was not something they did for reproduction. They did it for pleasure, because sex is very, very pleasurable.
Yeah.
Like it is. Like that, it was made that way. Why? Because again, reproduction is king. Okay, so going back to just keep this. This is gonna play everything.
Yo,
reproduction is king.
He was not kidding when he said reproduction is king. Oh my, jeez.
So that's why it's pleasurable, because if that's the mode of how you reproduce, then it's very good for that to be pleasurable, because we'll have a lot of it.
So our body encoded like, yo, this is good, and it's good, so it means it's gonna like exactly. I'm gonna make this good so you guys can keep living on.
Right, and so kind of going back to the prostitution and pornography. If, again, reproduction is king, if males have no effective limit on how many offspring they can have, then the males that are having a lot of offspring, right? Mm-hmm. If it's a numbers game, then who are within the population? If they're the ones having a lot of offspring, they're also passing down those traits to their offspring, right? And the majority of the population will be males who want to have a lot of offspring, right? Because those are the ones producing more offspring. So naturally the population is skewed to have males who want to have a lot of sexual intercourse, a lot of offspring, and not only that, but they don't have a particular care for who it's with, right? Yeah. Males and a spectrum, and
some guys just don't have standards. We're gonna be honest.
Yeah, and that's
okay.
And because they have so much pleasure from it, right? Their goal is literally to reproduce as much as possible from an evolutionary basis. So going back to this idea of reproduction is king. So and so that explains a lot of why prostitution catered towards men exists, right? And you think about that, and you're like, that makes so much sense,
wait,
right?
So the prostitution part came from the idea that
So let me reel back a little bit,
because I got the point what you're saying, that that the reason why like a lot of there's more men, like men naturally have this I guess tendency to want to have more sex, and
right.
It's because
so evolutionarily we've developed to have males want to have as much sex as possible,
because
right?
the people that we came from were the ones that had the most kids, and their kids follow some traits, and it's all like
so they're passing down males who want to have as much,
and their branch is much bigger than the other ones. That's
and
crazy.
So now think about in terms of prostitution. Sorry, I just like had a brain fart real quick, honestly. Where was I?
Because I was just trying to ask. Okay, so and now you're saying like the thing of this. What does this do with like the prostitution part, and why is it catered towards men?
Right. So if men are having a large number of offspring, right, they don't really care about the female as much, particularly, and if they're doing it a lot, right? If you're having a new female every week, what do you probably care about most? Attractiveness, because that's and evolutionary speaking, you can get into a whole reason of beauty. Beauty is a sign of health. It's a sign that a mate will be a good partner to reproduce with, which is why we naturally are attracted to people who are beautiful, because evolutionary speaking, our brains think that they're the best mates because they're the most healthy, right? So kind of going back to that idea, so men they want to have a large number of offspring, right? And they're also basing their sexual pleasures on attractiveness.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming from that, right? If men want to have a lot of sex and they care about what women look like, what do? They want to have, first, they want to, prostitution arises, right? Because they want to be with as many females as possible. They don't really care how it happens. They're not worried about who the female is, what a person. That's not only a factor a lot of times, right? And then also pornography. And a really interesting thing, they did an experiment with monkeys. And they basically, what they did is they gave them 2 options, okay? So monkeys love orange juice. Like, they love orange juice, okay? Yeah. And so what they did is they could go to a station and they could drink orange juice. So they couldn't pick it up. They had to, like, physically go and, like, drink the orange juice, right? Or on the other side, they could turn and they could watch, like, video, like basically a slideshow of pictures being played. And what they found, and the reason this is, they put the orange juice there, is because if the monkeys are interested in the pictures and they're watching the pictures instead of drinking orange juice, that would suggest a very high level of interest, right, in the pictures. And so since monkeys love orange juice, if they're not interested in the pictures, they drink the orange juice. There are 2 types of pictures that monkeys were interested in, to the extent that they didn't drink the orange juice. Yeah. The first one was the pictures of behinds of females.
Like human females, or like
monkey females? Yeah,
okay,
monkey females. Yeah, no.
I was like,
no.
They some dogs.
So they were interested in pictures of the behinds of female monkeys, and they were also interested in, this is interesting to me actually, dominant males. So the faces of dominant males, they were actually so interested in those pictures they wouldn't drink the orange juice either. And
dominant monkey males,
yes, like picture, like ones who, like, they saw them and they were like, oh, like, that's my competition, right? And kind of following from that, what you see in humans, kind of like an analogy for that is I don't know much about magazines, but Playboy magazine and basically magazines, like what are 2 types of magazines men like a lot, I guess. One would be like dominant males, celebrities, sports icons, bodybuilders, big, like those are, we're
bros, lifting bros, or sports. Right. Related to like the masculine leg.
And then the other thing would be like sexual women, like just very
Playboy,
and, all that type of stuff. Yeah. So that's and what we see, the reason that's important in monkeys is because it's across basically all species of animals, right? And so that explains a lot of why men are interested in those types of things, and that's a personality thing, like that. It's a very interesting explanation, like, right? And so going off of that's pretty much the extent of how evolution can explain these personality differences. But isn't that, like, super, super interesting?
That's actually really, really interesting that, like, and I guess they look at these pictures of well, actually, when I think about it from, like, human perspective, right now, the monkey, from the human perspective and connecting it to the monkey, like, they view those, dominant males, and they're like, oh, that's my competition. They thinking maybe, like, that's who I got to beat. How do I get there? Like, then maybe that's why they're so intrigued. And, like, as males themselves, and, me being an athlete, and also seeing, like, when I do pay attention, like, when LeBron steps up, and, when Jordan steps up, when someone great, someone dumb as a male, or not just as a male, but as a person, but specifically, since we're talking in the context of males, they, they're up on a stage. I pay attention, and it's because I'm trying to learn from them. I'm like, oh, that's where I want to get to. So it's like I had this thought too. That's I don't know if this can count as a profound thought, but it's like our the way we act is almost it's like how everything builds upon each other. They talk about, like, infrastructure. They just build and build and build, and, like, knowledge and science and math, they build upon each other. Our conscious, like, our the way we are biologically, or I guess the way we function as a society is actually so simple. Like, the whole part of, like, sex, and then we built upon, like, each of our our society, and, like, how we get to, I guess, define society and make these social constructs, and every contracts, these social contracts and everything, they just build upon this fundamental thing of like, we just want to have sex and we want to have sex with people we think are obviously survive and attractive and stuff like that. And it's just crazy to see that like we're just building upon such basic human, I guess, instinctual things.
And one thing I kind of we kind of focused on the males, because that's kind of where a lot of, in society, women are always like, men are pigs, like why are men like doing all, like why are they so into porn, like XXXX, whatever. And this is not like making excuses for whatever,
but just to kind of give like a biological scientific explanation.
Just to give like women generally a biological explanation for why men generally focus on those things, and it is something that women will have a harder time understanding, because that is we literally evolved differently based on reproduction.
Us surviving as a human race has shaped us
exactly
to who we are today.
But I didn't really talk about women.
Of course.
Let's talk about women.
Like, why are this is a question that I think about a lot. Why are women the way they are today? Why?
So let's analyze. Let's go back to the economics of from the women.
Econ,
so we
favorite.
We went from, we studied the male point of view. Let's go to the female point of view. If females are very much constricted about how many offspring they can have, then what does that mean? Well, they're going to naturally be much more choosy in who they have offspring with. Okay, and that means that they're looking for quality in their mates. Okay, and what that really boils down to in our society is, you see that women, when a really like I don't want to say really ugly dude, but like when an ugly dude is with a really attractive woman, you're like, how in the world did that even happen?
Yeah.
And what it boils down to is they're more interested in personality and a lot of these outside factors that really that aren't attractiveness, right? Because men are focused on attractiveness. Women are really focused on the quality of a man. And so three things that women are really interested in are ambition, okay, status, and money. And those are indicators of the quality of a man in our society for human species, right? Some people have even said the equivalent of porn for women is romance novels. And I think that really puts into perspective and really helps to shift like thinking as far as like, if like as a guy, if you're trying to get a girl, maybe obviously you're going to want to look as best as you can, but your personality is very important, and not just your personality, your drive, your ambition,
you got going for you,
all that is you might say that like girls are, some people would say that some women are gold diggers. Not there's like some, like a small, that's a common term, and you think about that, but from their perspective, like that makes sense.
It's making sense, but I can you hit upon like kind of go back to the biological why it's like from the beginning, because I know you talked to me about this being like the reason why they look for these personality traits, because since they're the ones limited on babies, they're going through the stage of nurturing the child and things like
so they are, like I said, if women are limited in their number of offspring, they're looking for quality in their mates.
Looking for someone that can,
they're looking for someone who can provide the best for them and their offspring. So who does that the best?
Someone with big ambitions, money, or status.
If there's status, if you in older societies, if you have high status, you have a much higher chance of reproducing, right? And again, going back to reproduction, the higher chance of you reproducing your offspring means that your genes get passed down the genetic pool.
So can I make this is an assumption, and me myself I'm making is like, so it's saying that from the, I guess, primitive, that's the right way to say, a primitive society, or from the early stages of human, early
millions and
we're talking like early stages of humans. They favorited men that could help them while they're out, because I'm guessing they're very in the time of society where there's a lot of environment, like the environment around them is really dangerous, and you're vulnerable once you're pregnant. You can't do much. They're looking for someone that is going to protect them. They're looking for someone that is going to help them in that stage of their like vulnerability, and then also helping them to take care of the child.
Exactly. So if they're looking for those traits, and we've just seen that the traits that have how that translated, how that quality aspect of what women are looking for has translated to today's terms are money, status, and
So, yeah.
and ambition.
And
Those
I-
are three things. It's
and
not it's not a solid rule, but it's generally speaking,
and
those are three major
I
things.
wanna quickly plug in our Melius, a profound thought. I've said this on one of my TikToks before, and it's the fact that like I realize that the way to truly, and you pointed out to this, is if you're a guy and you want to, go get a girl, the best way to actually go get a girl is to do something for yourself, build the either the ambition, the
Yeah.
status, or the money. And it's just because like you have to offer something of value to them,
Right.
as they are the ones that are in they're the ones in high demand.
Right.
They're the ones that get to decide, like, I'm looking for the most value, and
Mhm.
and value, it does not correlate to exactly how you look like.
Yeah, it's a much less like women literally think about, generally speaking, attractiveness much far less than men do in terms of who they want their partner to be. It's
Exactly.
that's just from
and
evolution.
not being a relationship doctor here, but if you think about it, right, because attractiveness is what is going to draw you to someone, right?
Yes.
But it's not what's going to keep you. And as the thing
Mhm.
as we just talked about, the attractive males, the males that are able to draw, right, from a biological standpoint, there are a lot of times the guys that mess these girls over, right? They
Yeah.
cheat on them, XYZ, and just biologically, these guys they have it easier to attract women, so they're just having sex, XYZ,
Yeah.
doing XYZ. So then it turns, for me, this is how I'm viewing it, and it turns, women start to become, they start to learn from this and say like,
Mhm.
oh, maybe looks is like, generally when a guy's really attractive, that's kind of a sign that he's going to do XYZ. So
yeah.
it's like they start
actually a
to
really
kind
good
of
point.
they start to kind of shift more to their biological thing of just getting older and realizing like, I'm looking for, especially when they're coming around the age of have kids, they finally come around and through all
Yeah.
that process
They're
learn
looking
like,
for someone to settle down with.
yeah, now the ambition, the status, and the money, it becomes a bigger drive, because it's just like,
because and like I think people kind of like, similar to how I would say women judge men for being driven by the beauty, attractiveness, all these things, and sometimes like men judge women for just being like shallow, only looking for status or money or whatever it is. But I think like if you think about it, like it makes sense, and like why wouldn't they look for that? Like really, like why would a woman not want a man who is ambitious, who has a lot of money, and who is well respected? He's very high status, because those are the males. Like that's naturally who like they're attracted to.
And this goes into say like, and it also can in turn guys too. You know what I'm saying? But biologically, guys, we don't think about those automatically. But I think in today's society, it's a lot more like now thinking like, it's kind of playing a way where males are now starting to be like, maybe we do want a woman that's high ambitious, high side, and so those women are becoming that. But that's a whole different topic. That's a whole different topic. It's actually crazy to again see how such our biological, like the fundamental of our biology and how we are, and like those our ancestors are just kind of like are the building blocks of the way we act today.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. And there's I have a few more things which I just want to touch on a couple things.
Go ahead. You've blown my mind. I can take more.
These are so these don't really have an evolutionary basis. I can't really explain to you why these exist, but I can tell you that they do exist.
Yeah.
One thing that I told you we'd get back to intelligence. One thing that we found is that generally speaking, men have a better like spatial awareness type of thinking. Like they can think, and this shows up a lot in like directions or things like that, or even in math. Like men, for whatever reason, can think spatially, like in 3 dimensions. We can imagine things much better, generally speaking, than women can. And on the flip side, women are they're generally better at like languages and writing, and the way this shows up is a very large portion of book reviewers are actually women, most of them, like the far majority, and that's very interesting, right? And then the way it shows up in men is, think about who's in STEM. Is a lot of it's men, and there's a lot of factors at play, but that's one way to explain like some things that happen like in men and women. That's an interesting personality difference, because it really does have a large effect. And one other thing I want to say is that IQ wise, there's literally no difference between the average man and the average woman.
Mm.
However, one interesting fact that they did find is that when men and women are given mathematics tests, the average score between them is the same. However, the range of scores for men is much wider, like far wider. And so what you see is that like the dumbest of men are like very, very dumb. Like far dumber than the dumbest women.
I don't even think you need an experiment to find that out.
And then you also have the smartest men in terms of STEM, like just mathematics, not really only mathematics, pretty much, as far as we know, are very, very smart, which could explain why you see a lot of Einstein's, these great thinkers. Now that also there's patriarchal aspects of society and again, the push down of women. There's a lot of factors at play.
There's a lot of factors at play, but we're just focusing on kind of like the biological aspect of it.
I just thought that was really interesting, right? And say this one more time, the average, exact same, like very, like literally the same. And so, but just the range for men was much larger.
But women are just more naturally like, they have their range is much smaller. It's more on the upper.
It's more confined. Yeah. It's much more confined. And so that's an interesting fact. Another thing I want to touch on is how women are more emotional, generally speaking, and we can attribute that to basically, since women are the child takers, especially since women birth the child, they have much more investment in their children, right? Mm-hmm. Because they literally they had a baby in their body for 9 months, right? And then they're breastfeeding the child and they're with the child. So it naturally makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint for women to evolve to become very much in tune with their children and become very emotional to help them, right? Because those kids are going to be much more likely to survive if the woman cares, right? True. So that's, remember, reproduction is king. Mm-hmm. So if women are more emotional in doing those things, they're going to do a better job, and that helps them. Now, the way that shows up is that across like any studies, and we all know this, women are much more empathetic. Okay, and that's an interesting word, right? I think it's key that we focus on like the empathy part, because a lot of times what you see is women, they aren't. A large reason why women aren't focused, they don't go into some STEM jobs, being like engineering, CS, maybe just like straight math, is because they're actually much more interested in doing things that have a very much direct effect and helping others, because they're much more empathetic. Yeah. And you can see this. Women are, a lot of like nurses are women, and a lot of doctors are women. True. Like, why is that? Because they're more empathetic and they're more interested in those things. They're not as interested in sitting down and learning about like, proofs. Like they don't really care as much.
I just want to highlight though that we definitely encourage women in STEM. We definitely encourage diversity in everything. Definitely. And the first programmers, this is to all my, if you know me, I'm a comp sci major. The first programmers, the programmers, computers, were women, because they were one of the first ones to take on that task. It's a whole thing with the ENIAC girls. Look it up if you're interested, but that's just a side note. But are we to come to a conclusion here? Or
you have to give one more thing.
Ben got more facts to spit.
I'm
here for it.
30 seconds to a minute. One last thing they found was that women they tend to be much more mystical and much more religious. I thought that was very interesting, actually, because in my head, when you think about like a preacher or a priest, or who do you think? I think of men. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's naturally because in Christianity,
patriarchy.
In Christianity, it's actually women aren't supposed to be pastors. Yeah. I don't know why, but that's why men are preachers, generally speaking, because Christians don't believe that women should be preachers. Like literally, they don't think they should. Yeah. Which is interesting, but that's a whole separate topic. But then following from that, it's interesting to me that women are more mystical and religious than men, despite men seeming to have a larger role in the systematic organization of religion, generally speaking. And I just thought that was a cool little tidbit. I can't explain why. I have no idea.
We can't explain. We're not the scientists here, but
we do know that exists. Yeah. Those traits happen. So that's all I have on the personality differences, but it's really interesting.
I think definitely this is probably one of the most interesting. This is a very interesting podcast we just recorded, because the amount of connections, the amount of just understanding of just kind of how we are now, and I guess if you listen to this, I just feel like you really do have a better, perspective on how people are, and having this knowledge just kind of allows you to be more, understanding of why things are the way they are. But I guess to conclude, Ben, what made you so interested in just kind of researching this? What was like the conclusion you came to when you finished all this?
When I finished all that, I just kind of fell into it when I was researching personality. I was like, ooh, this is an interesting
Really
video.
interesting.
Let me just check it out. Like, and it gives us a really, when you understand that there are literally biological differences between men and women, it actually helps you interact with the opposite sex more. And we're not trying to confine it to
whatever sex.
We're just saying, like, generally speaking, and these like I said, these studies have been found across all species of animals. But it helps us interact with women in a more positive way, since we're men, and it helps us understand how they function in a way that's very much beneficial, so we can interact with them better. I think that's that's why I wanted to study it, because it was like think about all of the innate differences that we perceive men and women to have, right? And it actually does have a scientific basis.
And it allows you to understand that there's reasons for the way things are that sometimes we don't think too deep about, but at the same time, things change, right? And things will change. Society will change as we continue to evolve. Our brain and our biology is, will adapt to it. But fundamentally speaking, having an understanding of like truly where all of this came from is mind blowing, and it makes you just
it's truly like astonishing to me.
It truly is. It's a cool fact. You get
cool
to spit this out of a bar tab, or take a girl out. She'd probably be like, you kind of weird for knowing this, but like it's cool. I promise you're gonna get some brownie points. But that is it for today's episode of the Adapt or Die podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys really enjoyed this personality series. As again, we try to emphasize we want you guys to first, when we talk about more of like the theory and the science and things like that, we want you guys to have a good understanding of that in order for you to then take this knowledge, take everything you just learned, and hopefully apply it to your life. And even if it's not every single, part that we've talked about, but if one thing can help you just interact with another human being better, then that's kind of our goal here. So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Adapt or Die podcast. It's been a blast, and I'll catch y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Adapt or Die podcast.
For more information about us, follow us on Instagram at Adapt or Die, or find us on TikTok at AOD Podcast. You can also watch the podcast on our YouTube channel at AOD Co, spelled AODCO.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, continue to explore and adapt.